Welcome to the Divine Mothering Podcast. My name is Christina, and this is the place to come if you feel called to make radical change in motherhood, heal your past, and embody the wisdom of the Divine Mother. I empower mothers to rediscover their true self, heal their lineage, and reclaim their power. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here with me, and in this episode, I will be diving deep into the transition into motherhood, why it's a rite of passage, and the identity shift that occurs when we move from womanhood to motherhood. So grab that cuppa, enjoy that contact nap, or enjoy wherever you are commuting from. Let's dive deep into motherhood. So, what I think would be a really beneficial way to start this episode would be from the beginning of motherhood. When you think about wanting a baby, when you're wanting to conceive, or you're trying to conceive, as that's the correct term for it. And we often think either motherhood will be super easy or it'll be super hard, depending on your beliefs around motherhood, what you've been brought up around, what society often tells you, what your culture tells you, what your traumas told you. Anything related to motherhood you've been exposed to will form your beliefs of what you think, how your journey will be played out. So we often don't really give a second thought to what motherhood will really be like. We kind of have unrealistic expectations, particularly if we've been around other mums or other people that have really embraced motherhood, and it's been a wonderful journey for them, and they've not really had any challenges. So we think it will be the same for yourself, you're same for, or yeah, motherhood will be really, really good, you think, and it will be super easy. Everybody breastfeeds, and it will just be super easy. Everything's easy, easy, easy. And I think we go in feeling a little bit naive. We often, when we are trying for a baby or we're thinking, oh, I want a baby, we say to our partners or our husbands, oh, you'd make such a good dad. Oh, I'd be such a good mom. And the truth is, young girls are not actually told, and they're not taught what happens when you become a mother. When you go through that initiation, that rite of passage, and the loss you may feel. And that's not to say all mothers go through that, but a lot do feel like that. And I don't like to paint the picture that motherhood is a loss, because I don't believe it to be like that. The more I've dived deep into like spirituality and motherhood and rite of passage and initiations, I feel motherhood is an actual blessing, and it's just because the lack of awareness and support, and the fact that motherhood is just not valued. So I think sometimes we can go into trying for a baby and going, yeah, it's going to be a blast, it's going to be amazing, without any awareness of how you may actually feel and what change occurs. And for me personally, I didn't feel any struggles when it came to the maternal side of it, the nurturing, the caring, the yeah, changing nappies, breastfeeding. Breastfeeding came so natural for me. I didn't have one problem. And I know that's a rare thing. And a lot of women do experience struggles, like the baby won't latch, there's tongue ties, there's all sorts of issues that women can experience. But I do think when there's lack of support there, that hinders it. So I didn't really experience this loss of the old, like I'm struggling, it's really hard. But what I found really, really, really challenging was the anxiety, the the mental load of anxiety, because my son was displaying a lot of symptoms that I won't go on to today, but it consumed me. This anxiety consumed me. I was so worried about his well-being, his health. I was having intrusive thoughts, all sorts of ridiculous things. And if you follow or subscribe to this podcast or channel, wherever you're watching or listening from, you can catch my postnatal anxiety story next. On the next episode, you can just watch those next and you don't want to miss out on those. I think before we even become pregnant, when we are conceiving, trying to conceive, I think it's important to ask ourselves, why do I want a baby? Because often we want a baby because we want to feel whole, we want to feel complete, and that our family will be complete once we have another baby. Like you want another after another. You kind of get that baby blues, is it that? No, you get broody, that's the word. You become broody again, and I'm experiencing that right now. I'm just like, "I want another baby." Do you think, like, you're saying that because you think it'll make you feel whole and you're complete, like you're enough? Jumping in and going for it and knowing kind of what to expect, but at the same time we don't know what to expect because we are going into the unknown, particularly for first time mums and for a woman that may not have been around women that had babies growing up. Like for me personally, because it comes so natural for me, is because I've worked with children for 11 years. I was working in a nursery. I was a nanny. I was a nursery manager. I have been around children. So that was my advantage. And I always think of those women that have become a mum for the first time, that have had no experience. They didn't grow up around children. They haven't been able to get an idea of what it's like to be a mother. And I always think, well, how hard must it be for them when they're just sent home out of the hospital, wherever they are sent to go home. And yes, particularly if they're a single mum, they're just on their own. But going back to when we become mothers for the first time, when we become pregnant, this is when rite of passage begins, when we go through that initiation. Because why is it a rite of passage at this point? Because we physically change. We emotionally, physically, spiritually, and mentally change when we become a mother. We metamorphosis into another being because we are shedding that old identity of the old maiden, because we physically change on a cellular level. Our breasts begin to sag, or our breasts begin to get like enlarged, get big when we become pregnant. We get stretch marks. Our body is stretching. We put on weight. We lose weight. We just, our vaginas change. Everything changes. We have scars. That I had a cesarean, so I have a scar now. And even like a bit of a trigger warning, of a bit of a TMI here, but like literally my labia, everything down below is changed. And I didn't even give birth vaginally. So everything's changed. I'm literally not the same person physically, because what also happens when a woman is pregnant is the brain actually changes. So you may have heard of the term mum brain, baby brain, and we kind of laugh it off as some joke because we become forgetful. And I can testify to this. I am absolutely terrible at forgetting where I've put my phone, put my keys. I never put it in the same place, I will admit. But as soon as I put it down, literally 10 seconds later, or 30 seconds later, I can forget where I've put my phone, and I will be searching the whole house, top to bottom, wondering where it is. And it's kind of this common theme, this running joke that mummy's lost her phone again. Let's look for mummy's phone. And my son will even grab it and go, "Mummy, your phone." Or when we're leaving the house and we're in the car, he's like, "Have you got your phone?" Because he knows how forgetful I can be about my phone. We become forgetful because what's happened here is parts of the brain change. And I'm not a neuroscientist, so I don't know all the like technical scientific names for the parts of the brain, but I have done my research and read books and know what occurs to the brain. Is the grey matter in the brain becomes more concentrated, and the part of the brain that controls these things to remember things and like solve problems and all that kind of gets shut off. And the part of the brain that controls like love, empathy, emotion, connection kind of gets switched on, like heightened, if you want to call it that, because what a mother needs to do is be attuned to her baby to meet the baby's needs because the baby needs to survive. So the mother will become that doting mother, put all her energy, all her focus onto the baby to keep the baby alive and become in rhythm with that baby and attuned to the baby so they can thrive together. So it is a real physical change that we go through because our bodies are not the same. And that's why part of it is a rite of passage, because we are now birthing a new being, a new woman gets birthed. The old woman has now gone, and we move through this initiation, this transition from the maiden to the mother. So we literally rebirth a whole new woman as she's rebirthing her baby. And in some cultures, this is celebrated. They see this as a rite of passage, and they honor the woman during this time, during her postpartum period, because it's a celebration. So their postpartum care is top notch. In Western society, we don't honor that time as much. The village has gone. We don't have that village anymore. And so what has happened here, the sacredness is gone. We don't feel there's any value in motherhood. And so we don't offer that much support to mothers. Now, I'll go further on to that in a sec. Going back to that about the old person has gone. When some change happens, it can feel uncomfortable. We are creatures of habit. We like comfort. We like to be in the known and things that are familiar. So when change occurs, when our life gets shook about, it feels really, really uncomfortable. And because we don't want to let go of the old, we don't want to experience this change because we do want to feel safe. Our bodies and our minds want to feel safe. We kind of create a lot of resistance and disharmony between the old identity and the new identity, being able to enjoy motherhood. And because this old identity is dying, we are rebirthing a new identity, we can experience deep, deep loss and sadness. And there's actually a term for this called matrescence. And it's just funny how it's similar to adolescence. Because when a teenager hits puberty, they go through a rite of passage. They are entering adolescence. They're becoming a young man, a young woman. Their whole being is changed just the same as a pregnant woman. Hormones are going all over the place. The skin changes, the breasts change, hair grows in places that it didn't grow before. And it's the same for a woman. So when this occurs, we are now entering that empowered motherhood. And this term was coined by anthropologist Dana Raphael in the mid-1970s. And it was all about this identity shift that occurs. And we experience this kind of grief, this loss, this deep sadness. And often a lot of postpartum depression gets diagnosed when in fact it could be just this matrescence. And it's not to say that it should be easy and we shouldn't be diagnosing postnatal depression. But I think we need to have more of an understanding of this term, and there is becoming more awareness of it. But rather than just handing out a pill, we need to have more discussions, more research done on this topic of this transition, this rite of passage that occurs, because the life changes. You are not going to be the same woman you were before you were pregnant. I experienced so much discomfort during that time is because we are resisting the change. We old identity has gone, and we resist this new identity. This mother is so empowering. And I feel like we kind of paint this picture of we are losing ourselves in motherhood. We don't know who we are. That is some loss when it's actually can be really empowering and a blessing to be a mother. And the fact that we are painting this picture of it being a loss when it's not meant to be, it's just lack of awareness, lack of support, and the fact that we live in a society that doesn't value motherhood. So when we do move through that, it becomes harder because we have kind of all these things going against us, and our own ego is one of them. So your ego is a part of your brain, the psyche part of your brain that actually just wants to keep you safe, keep you familiar in things, keep you in your comfort zone. And that's a kind of a good thing. We need that for survival, but it's not helpful when it comes to these situations. So the ego doesn't want you to change. It doesn't want you to move through this rite of passage and metamorphosis into a new woman, this mother, this divine mother that you are so rightly are. And you kind of can experience that kind of a mini ego death because the ego doesn't know what to do. It can dissolve when you go through these rites of passage, especially when you take it from a highest perspective. And the ego would start to make up all these stories. It will start saying, oh, well, look how good your life was before. Look at how much freedom you used to have. You're not a good mum. You can't do this. This is hard. It will make up all these stories to show you that it's not a good idea to be a mum because it's scary. There's change. It will make it out that it's scary and that it's uncertain. And in a way it is, particularly for a first time mum, because you may feel, am I doing this right? Is I using my intuition? What? I don't know. It's not coming natural for me. And that's why I go back to where I said there may have been women that have not been around other women that had babies or been around children when they were younger as well. So the ego will just make up all these stories as to why you should not enjoy motherhood. And this is not to say we shouldn't have struggles because it is challenging. Motherhood is challenging, but it's kind of reframing that narrative. And I think the only reason why it's hard is because we resist quite a lot and we choose not to accept. If you chose acceptance, it would make this transition much easier. And because we live in a Western society that doesn't honor the feminine energy that's required in motherhood, and motherhood is not seen as something productive. And I'm using air quotes there for anybody who's listening on the audio podcast, because we do live in a society that celebrates productivity. I like to call it the wounded masculine society because that is literally what it is. We can say toxic masculinity, we can call it the matrix, we can call it the system, whatever you want to call it. I prefer the wounded masculine just because nothing about the divine and everything that's created here is actually toxic. It's just wounded. And so we just need to bring back the feminine into balance with that. And so mothering is not seen as productive in a wounded masculine society because it requires you to be still, requires you to listen to your body, or listen to your intuition, be slow, and to just embrace being a mother, because children are our biggest teachers and they would tell us to slow down because that's how it's supposed to be. Childhood and mothering is supposed to be slow and curious and nurturing, not rush, hurry up, grow up, be productive. So that's why we don't get the postpartum care that we're needed, because they think maternity leave, you're not being productive. Hurry up, get back into the slave system, get back into working, so then you can contribute to the capitalistic society that we live in. And so we're not valued as mothers. And I think that's part of the problem, why we experience so much discomfort during this matrescence, is because we are not supported, because the Western society doesn't support it. They think we're not contributing to anything really. We're just at home. We're just, quotations again, a stay-at-home mum. And when we begin to define ourselves as just that, we feel we're not adding any value to the family in any way. So are you choosing to follow that narrative, or are you choosing to come back into your power and say, no, I will not choose to follow that narrative? Because we just need to bring awareness back to the fact that we do offer value as a mother. We are raising the next generation. We are like bringing life here on earth. And it's not seen as a rite of passage. We're just seen as another woman having another child, and we're told that we must get married, have a baby, buy a house, do all these in an order. And it's not really meant to be like that. So we don't really receive the care we need during that transition time. So I found really interesting was a reel that was suggested to me that was about postpartum care for a mother. And it said, imagine if basically if the village was there to care for a woman. And it was a clip of somebody coming to cook for her, somebody coming into the house to clean for her and do all these jobs and nice things, whilst the mother stayed in bed with the baby to rest and supported and have her village, her tribe there. And obviously, I had my opinion on it. I commented on it and said basically what I've just been telling you, is that there's no sacredness, there's no honor. We don't honor motherhood as a rite of passage. It's not celebrated. There are so many cultures that celebrate this time. And it was interesting because I looked at a lot of the comment, and there was people saying, we still do this in India. We do this in India. We do this in India. We do this in India. It's just, I found it so interesting that, yeah, in the West, we just don't celebrate or honor a mother. Like during that transition period, she is now gone through this initiation. She has physically changed. Her life will never be the same again. And it's not celebrated. I think the most we come to celebrating is like baby showers or gender reveals. And I will be honest, these kind of things don't really resonate with me. I never had a baby shower. I didn't do a gender reveal. I don't really get them. Maybe because I just don't like being on the spot, the center of attention, because I'm a little bit of an introvert. So I just don't like all of that. And also feel it's quite superficial stuff. It's not really, doesn't honor the mother. It's more about, oh, the baby. And they're all thinking, can't wait for you to have the baby because I just want to have a cuddle with the baby. They don't serenade the mother. We don't come together and celebrate and honor the woman, look after her, and see this as a part of her life that is to be celebrated, not kind of feed into a narrative that, oh yeah, your life's gonna change. Just wait until you see. Just wait until this. Just wait until that. Oh, you'll be up all night. And it's just like, okay, stop with the kind of fear mongering almost. And it's not to say those things don't happen, because I think for me, my expectations, I knew babies would wake up all night. I didn't go into motherhood feeling like I was going to lose myself. A lot of women think they lose themselves, their identity loss, because of this identity shift that occurs. So that didn't really happen for me, because it did become very natural for me. I didn't feel like I lost myself or anything like that. And I knew what to expect. So that part did not bother me. And we often hear terms like, I just want to feel like myself again. It is a mother. I just want to go back to that old me. I just want to feel like me again. And I'm sorry to break it to you, but that woman has gone. She no longer exists. And that may upset some people, and that is totally fine because we don't like change. We don't like to, yeah, in the unknown. But that's what happens when change occurs. And the thing is here, the key here is actually to rediscover yourself as this new woman outside of motherhood. Because when we do change as a woman, as a mother, when we become mother, our values change as well. So what we once valued and cared about and our hobbies and everything changes because where our brain changes, we are focusing more on empathy and connection, and we just want the best for our baby. So now we'll be looking more at ethically sourced things. We want organic food for our baby. We want nice cool clothing. Become a mum for the first time. We kind of wake up in a sense. And so our values change. So that means rediscovering yourself as a woman. And that's why I feel motherhood can bring you back to your true self, your true authenticity, your true soul self, because you kind of get rid of all that conditioning and you become a mother. Because now, because the brain has shifted and physically changed, we start to think about, well, how am I going to fit into the world with me and my baby? So then you begin to look at the world differently. And that is another whole podcast in itself, which I probably will go on to in the future about how we like look at the world differently. But for now, I'm going to just bring it back went off a little tangent then, but get back to the whole Western society of gender reveals and baby showers. I find it really just not something that honors this rite of passage. It's just a fun thing we can get to do. Go, yeah, you're going to have a baby soon and have some nice photos. And it's kind of consumer based because we buy lots and lots of things for the baby. And we don't actually buy anything for the mother. It's funny that, but when like my sister-in-law had a baby, when my friends have had a baby, I actually think of the woman. So I go and buy her maternity pads. I go and buy like nipple creams. I go and I do put a few things in for the baby as well, because that is important for the mother. And just to like support her because she doesn't have her tribe anymore. She doesn't have her village anymore. And I think that's part of the discomfort during this period of time. She's having to deal with matrescence, but she's also having to deal with the mental load of doing everything alone because we are now on our own, because the rest of our sisters, our village, are actually in the 9 to 5 system. They have gone back to work because being a mother, remember, isn't productive. So we are told to get back to work. You're not getting a lot of time off with your babies. We're going to create disconnect. So go back to work. So then that leaves the stay-at-home mother alone on her own. So she has to deal with also this identity shift, this matrescence, and also the mental load alone. But also, I do think it's important if we're feeling burnout that we have to really ask ourselves why and bring some harmony and balance back into ourselves. But that's another whole load of episode on its own as well. So rather than tasting baby food out of a nappy, we need to honor the mother and celebrate this rite of passage because she deserves it. A mother deserves to be honored because it is an empowering experience to become a mother. And we need to start seeing it like that. And if you're wondering what I'm referring to about tasting food out of baby's nappy, there's actually a game that we do here. I think it is this at a baby shower. You kind of have to guess the baby food out of a baby's nappy. And because it looks like poo or something like that. I'm not really 100% sure, but anyway, that's the kind of thing you do at baby showers, and it just doesn't resonate with me anyway. So I hope this episode has helped you to really bring some awareness and if you are experiencing some challenging times as a mother, just remember you are rebirthing a whole new you. You are dying. The old you is dying. So it's going to feel a little bit like a roller coaster at first, but it's meant to happen. We are not meant to stay the same when we become mothers. So there's nothing wrong with you. This is totally normal to feel emotional and upset because our hormones are all over the place too. So I just want to leave you with this thought. Where are you resisting in motherhood? Is it this identity shift that you're going through? Is it the fact that you're not enjoying it? Have a think about where you might be feeling some resistance. So I hope this episode has been really helpful and help you to surrender to this transition a bit more easier. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Divine Mothering podcast. You can join me over on Instagram too, where I share a bunch of insights into my own life. And please do share this episode with all your mum friends. But for now, I will see you on the next episode. Much love.